is a wonderful grand sweep of the recent history of how we ended up in. But before we go to Corona, I want to ask a little bit more about the economy before the Corona. What was the state of two vulnerable sectors, particularly? One is the people who are self-employed, the unorganized sector.
MSME, we call them.
Yes,
Medium
even smaller than the SMEs.
Yeah.
Even smaller than the small, medium industries.
Yes.
The street vendor, the taxi driver, the people who are self-employed, which I'm told is like 60-70% of Indian workers.
Right. Correct.
Second group is youth, because the youth unemployment has also been very, very high.
Yes.
So can you tell us what is the state of affairs before the Corona of these two vulnerable groups, and why were they in bad shape?
Well, as far as the small, medium industries, before I come to the even smaller industries, they were hit by the high interest rates.
Okay.
And I had quite a hard time persuading the Prime Minister, and he ultimately was persuaded to send him home, which he did. And there was a uproar in the country. All the elites and the society ladies, they're cooing about him and abusing me for having got rid of him. But the fact is that he appears to have come with an agenda. He's some part of some organization in America, 40 people who are supposed to take charge of all the financial system of the world. But if he wanted to deliberately sabotage it, he did a terrific job. What was the thing in the small? When you make, first of all, not only did we have high interest rates for giving loans, but the the interest rate on deposits was reduced to 6% from earlier 8%. And that meant that the savings of retired people, savings of people who are vendors and so on, who take their money and put it in fixed deposits to earn some more money, all these people were affected. And the fact that the middle class, because of the cut in the interest rate for the rate of return on their fixed deposits, the demand had started going down. And once the demand started going down, naturally they were all affected. The shopkeepers or the shops or the fellows sitting on the pavement and selling, all these people began to face the demand shortage problem. And so it was in a pathetic state. And I told you, the growth rate, which was 8%, was nothing for us after Narasimha Rao's period. And suddenly we were seeing 4%. Even that had some padding. So I think the sectors that you mentioned, unemployment went up largely because small and medium industries were folding up. 60% of the employment in the country of semi-skilled and some skilled is in these industries, and they were closed.
If I understand correctly, mismanagement at the top level in the government led to a crisis of credit because of high interest rates, and this affected the industry, including the small medium industry, and this led to a demand problem, and this demand problem then meant that the small street vendor and local vendors, the demand for their goods went down, and all of this created a worsening of the unemployment. So that's a kind of a nutshell of how one thing fed another.
Yeah. Only thing that you have used a gentle word called mismanagement. It is not mismanagement. It is lack of understanding of economics.
So now let's talk about, given that India was already in bad shape, so now we have this COVID-19 problem.
Yes.
There is, of course, the medical problem. People are losing lives and so on. But luckily and thankfully, India is done better than most other parts of the world. Yes. The second issue is the economic issue, because you can survive the virus But then if you don't have jobs and there's hunger and unemployment created, then that's just as bad or maybe even worse in some cases, because instead of one person dying, there'll be 50 people out of work. So you also have a problem like that. So
yes,
will go down to a certain extent, and therefore it will affect exports, India's exports. Of course, the oil going down is a bonanza because India imports oil. We can buy cheap oil now. I wish India had a big storage capacity.
But we don't have storage capacity, and we are not driving cars anymore. Streets are all empty.
See, in the US, there is a huge national oil reserve because they've taken the empty coal mines, empty coal mines, and turned them into kind of containers, gigantic containers of millions of barrels worth, so they won't leak. And India has such a huge mining industry for hundreds of years that if India wanted, India could also have a very big storage capacity. So whenever there is an oil recession, you can just fill it up with reserve and save it for other time. But I think India does not have a storage capacity of that kind.
And because during Obama's time, the shale oil was being stored, so they had built up these capacities using abandoned mines and so on. We don't have many abandoned mines also because we still use a lot of coal. The issue is this, that what you have done, what has happened in these after this coronavirus came, is that factories have stopped producing, and people have stopped being employed, or they are not being paid their salary. So therefore, you have now a naked dance of demand and supply, squeezing our throat, or the economy's throat. So you have to get the production moving, and for that you have to induce people by giving them money, and it is what is they call as the stimulus factor, which Americans talk in huge amounts. During the period of Mr. Manmohan Singh and Pranab Mukherjee, the total stimulus amount was 4.5% of GDP. How much do you think that we have done in the last 2 months, or even before, if you took the previous financial year? Less than 1%.
Now is the time to do more.
What is the problem? You see, I'll give you another example. The bank, have you heard of something called the repo rate?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay. So you have heard of a reverse repo rate also, when the banks deposit their surplus cash and earn interest from the Reserve Bank. That's called the reverse repo rate. Now, we had 60,000 before coronavirus, 60,000 crores of bank money lying in deposit with the Reserve Bank, for which Reserve Bank was paying them an interest. Now we have 7 lakh crore rupees in that account. Why? Because banks are not lending. Why they're not lending? Because they know that they may not be repaid, and then there'll be a commission inquiry on them. And so there's total risk averseness across the board, and this is what is going to take us tumbling down.
So a huge stimulus is needed.
Huge stimulus, at least in my opinion,
10% of GDP.
Well, I don't mind. I mean, you see, people are still living in the gold standard. There's no gold standard. There's no bar for you printing as much as you want. You build a road and those guys come and work, and you print notes and give it to them. How does it harm the economy? It actually boosts the demand. People go start buying.
But it will also create inflation. I mean, if you keep doing it.
If you have excess supply, which you had, and now it's depleting because the inventory is now being drawn on. But cars, for example, they are just lying in the open sun. and so many other household appliances. You go across the board, those supply is still lying there, and there's no one to buy it.